everyone, it's Meg, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some books I have read recently. You guys know the drill with these videos. They are videos where I talk about all the books that I have read recently, and for the past two videos in this series I have kind of changed it up a little bit where I kind of do an activity whilst I talk about the books, like my first one, which is where I did some watercolour painting, and the second one, which is my most recent one, I did it where I was doing my makeup. And we're just doing a normal one today. We're going to chill whilst I talk about some books. I would love to do kind of some more change up ones where I do an activity whilst talking about books. So if you guys have any suggestions of things you would like me to do for this series, leave them in the comments, because I really did enjoy doing those videos, even if the makeup one was a little bit chaotic to say the least. But I have 6 books to share with you guys today, and the majority of them are either poetry or novels in verse, which is very exciting. And also I just want to point out that for some of these books I do have reading vlogs for them, so I will leave them in the description if you want to go and check them out and hear probably some thoughts that I might not end up including in this video. But yes, if you would like to hear what I think of all the books that I have in this video today, then keep on watching. So the first book that I have on this list is Poems to Save the World With, which is illustrated and chosen by Chris Riddell. If you are a regular watcher, you know that I have read the 2 other anthologies in this little series that Chris Riddell has done. If you do not know who Chris Riddell is, he is a British author and illustrator for children specifically, but he does do some adult stuff as well. And he has basically over the past few years done these poetry anthologies where he chooses some poems around some themes and illustrates them. And I have again talked about all the other ones in previous recent reads videos, but he has lovely illustrations. I absolutely adore them, and this one, they all have themes like I said, and this one is Poems to Save the World With, and this was put together around the time of when COVID happened. So there's lots of different things in this book, from like poems to do with like environmental, political, and also to do with the pandemic that is going on right now. There's different sections, and I just really enjoy these collections. They are great for all ages, they are great for all abilities, whether you are a beginner when it comes to poetry or more advanced. I really think there is something for everyone, and like I have said for every single time I've read one of these collections, is that I love the illustrations because they take the reading experience to a whole other level and just bring the poems to life in a whole new way, which I absolutely adore. So I really enjoyed this book, and again, if you are new to poetry or you're just looking for a new anthology to get into, I highly recommend these. They're very quick reads. I have tabbed some of my favourite poems in here as well, which is so fun, and again they are absolutely stunning books to have on your shelf, both stunning inside and out. Next up we have Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and this is the stunning 2019 film edition which I got for Christmas off my wonderful friend Em, and this is a book I never wanted to read until I saw the most recent adaptation, and ever since then I've wanted to read the book, and I finally got to read it, and I really did end up enjoying this. Of course, I'd like to think most of you who are watching this video know what this book is about, but if you do not, it is basically about these 4 sisters called Meg, Jo, Beth and Amy, and it's basically a growing up story. It's a coming of age story. This book is split into 2 parts. It's split into kind of their childhood and then their like adulthood and like young adulthood in the second half, and it is just stories of them growing up. And I just really adored this book. I found it a lot easier to read than I thought I was, because obviously it's a classic, so sometimes the language can be a little bit different. But once I got into this I really understood it, and you really get to see the characters in a different light compared to the films, because I've watched obviously the 2019 adaptation and the 2000 adaptation, which I'm not personally a big fan of. You get to see the characters a whole new way. I feel like Meg, especially in Amy, I saw them in very different lights. Meg is a lot more vain and proud than I feel like she's portrayed in the films, and Amy isn't quite as horrid. I don't think in the book as she is in the films. Like, I don't know if that's just me, but that's how I find her. I absolutely adore Jo. Jo is definitely my favourite character, and I love Laurie. Laurie is also feel like he's portrayed slightly differently in the book than he is in the films, but I adore Laurie as well, and I just love seeing like this sisterhood together and how they are so close and so different, yet how much they love each other and care for each other. And I love seeing all the little antics and adventures that they go on and how they grow to become young women and the lives that they lead. And I feel like it's also a very forward-thinking book for when it was written, because obviously women at this time were still expected to marry, they'd be expected to be housewives and have children and all that sort of thing. But it shows these women who want to have more in their lives than just marriage. Especially Jo, obviously this is the most obvious thing. Jo wants to be a writer and she wants to make her own way in the world. She isn't really interested in romance. She's more interested in kind of making her own way in the world and making her mark. And I really enjoyed that about this book, and I feel like it's definitely, like I said, a much more forward-thinking book from the time that it was written, and it has a really wonderful message, and you just fall in love with these girls and the characters. And I love, especially in this edition, how it has some of the photos from the film in it as well, which I really do love. I think it's done very tastefully in this book as well. But absolutely adored it. I'm so glad that I did decide to read this book in the end, even though I wasn't a massive of some of the previous adaptations. Excuse me. But so glad that I finally decided to pick up this book. I absolutely adored it, and it has definitely become a new favourite. Next up we have two novels in verse, and I both read these in a reading vlog, so I will leave it in the description if you want to go and check that out. But the first book that I have is Blood Moon by Lucy Cutheu, and this is a book I have not heard loads about, but from what I have heard it has been great. So I was very curious to read this book, and I read this book in about 2 sittings. I could not put this book down. It was so gripping and so much more emotional than I thought it was going to be, and it is probably one of my favourite books of the year because I absolutely adored it. So this book is about our main character Frankie, who is in high school, and it is basically takes place roughly in about a week, this book. And it starts where Frankie has her first sexual experience, where she ends up getting her period, and she finds it rather embarrassing, but the guy she's with is really nice and they kind of laugh about it and then forget about it. And then the next day somebody finds out about what happened and basically makes a meme of Frankie which goes viral, and it is basically about the fallout from that, how Frankie deals with it, how something like this can escalate so quickly, and kind of the hate and the shame and the threats that she gets from anonymous people from this meme. And it was so intense and so much more heart-wrenching than I was expecting it to be. You really get to feel for Frankie, and there are a few side plots as well, and you're trying to figure out who posted this meme, and you realise the true power of the internet and how something so small can be blown up and go be shared by millions of people across the world within a matter of minutes, a matter of hours. And you really get to see the impact that it has on people, and I feel like especially women, who tend to be shamed a lot more for things like periods and sex compared to men. And I feel like this is such an important book. I really love the message of, like, obviously feminism and bullying and online shaming. I love the talk and messages around that. I can't speak for kind of the research for it, but I feel like it is very well done, and I love how the book ended as well, and kind of how Frankie managed to started to come back from what had happened. And I think this is such an amazing book. I think people, not of all ages, but I think it's a very important book kind of in high school and college, and also for boys and men to read as well as women and girls, because I feel like everybody could learn something from this book. And it is a page turner, I will tell you that. You will not want to put this book down once you start reading it. So I absolutely adore this book so much. Probably one of my favourite books of the year so far, and highly recommend if you are looking for a new novel in verse. And then the second book that I read in this Novelinverse reading vlog, which again is in the description, is Moonrise by Sarah Crossan. And Sarah Crossan is a renowned UK YA author, specifically and mainly for writing books in verse. I've heard nothing but amazing things about her novels, so I had Moonrise on my shelf for over a year, so it was time for me to pick it up and read it. And this basically follows our main character named Joe, and his brother Ed has been on death row for 10 years. And Ed finally gets his date for his death sentence. So Joe basically travels to Texas where his brother is in prison to try and free him and stop him from dying, basically. And I didn't know what to expect going into this novel. It's not a topic I would generally read about because it is kind of out of my comfort zone, but of course it's a very important topic, and this is set in America, by the way, on death row. Not a lot happens in this book, which is why out of these two Novelinverses that I have on this list, I do prefer Blood Moon. But not a lot happens. It's very much a build-up of this family, of Joe's family, of Ed, and kind of how these people came to be who they are, building up the story to the point of where they are now in the current day in Texas, trying to free Ed. And you hear a lot about kind of their family and how broken it is, and you're trying to figure out all this time whether Ed is innocent or not, because you're not really sure and Joe isn't really sure, his family isn't really very sure whether he is innocent or not. Obviously, even though they are family, they don't know, and obviously you do find out towards the end of the book. But it is a very sad book, and a very important book as well, about a subject that I don't personally know a lot about, but about how people are treated for being sentenced and convicted of crimes wrongly. That didn't make any sense, but I hope it did. And yeah, it is a very important read, a very sad read, but I did end up enjoying it, even though I don't feel like it had quite the same amount of impact that I was hoping of. But I did really end up enjoying this book. I wasn't a massive fan of kind of the romance that happened here. I don't really see the point in why it was there, apart from being a side story. But I did really end up enjoying it, even though I feel like a bit more could have happened, because like I said, not a lot happened. It's more kind of a build-up and learning about the backstory of all these characters to the point of where they are now. But I did really enjoy it, and I do definitely want to check out more of Sarah Crossan's work in the future, because I'm really intrigued in the stories that she writes, and hopefully I will get to some very soon. Second to last book on this list is an arc, and I also have a vlog for this, so again I will leave it in the description if you want to go and hear some of the thoughts that I have in that vlog. But that book is Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joy Goffney, and this book comes out on the 4th of May this year. This book is marketed as for lovers of To All the Boys I've Loved Before and The Sun Is Also a Star, and this basically follows our main character called Quinn. Quinn is a chronic list maker. She has a journal where she writes lists about everything imaginable, some things that she would never admit to people out loud, some things that are troubling her, just everything you could possibly imagine she writes down in lists. And then one day her journal goes missing, and somebody ends up posting one of her lists online and basically blackmails her into doing the things on this list, otherwise this blackmailer is going to share the rest of her journal to the world. So Quinn basically has to deal with the consequences of what is happening and kind of step out of her comfort zone and do things on this list. Some things that she definitely does not want to do, does not want to own up to. There are some lies on there, there are some things that she is not proud of doing, some things that she doesn't want to own up to, but she has to do them. And I did really enjoy this book. It took me a little longer to get into it, but I definitely see the vibes from the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy, because obviously Laura Jean loses her love letters and Quinn loses her journal, and they both have to kind of deal with the fallout of these actions. This is another book that takes place in a very short space of time. It maybe takes place within like a week or a couple of weeks roughly, so you get to see a really big amount of growth that happens with Quinn within such a small space of time, as she has to own up and to the things that she has done which she isn't proud of, and to tell the truth about the lies that she has told, which some of them which are very, very big lies. And it's also, so you see her grow so much, because I don't feel like she's the most likeable character at the start of this book, but you really get to really appreciate Quinn. She's a very complex and angry and confused teenager, and you do really grow to appreciate her and kind of understand her and really support her, which is really nice. Of course, this is also marketed as a romance, and I actually really enjoyed the romance in this. It's one of my favourite parts of the book, which usually romance isn't my favourite part of the books, but I did really enjoy this one, and I really love the friendships that blossomed in this as well. Like a particular friendship between Quinn and another main character in here. When you read this book, you will know what I mean. I just loved it, and I love how supportive it was, and I just absolutely adored it. And I really love the discussions about race and racism as Quinn goes to a school that is mainly white, so she's one of the very few black people that actually goes to this school, so she's never really had any black friends to spend time with, and I really love how it is kind of tackles, like I said, topics about race and all that sort of thing. I think it is very important, and I really love the discussions in it. And yes, I really enjoyed this book. I think it's a really wonderful rom-com slash coming of age story slash romance and trying to get out of your comfort zone, and talks about race and all that sort of thing. I think it is a really wonderful book. If you are interested in this book, I highly recommend picking it up when it comes out on May 4th, because I think it's just a really wonderful book with some really important topics discussed, and just a really lovely romance and a really lovely coming of age story, and I just really enjoyed it. And then the last book that I have on this list is Where Hope Comes From, Poems for Resilience, Healing and Light by Nikita Gill. And this is a poetry collection that Nikita wrote during lockdown, during this pandemic that's obviously ongoing, and it also has illustrations in it, which I know Nikita has done herself. And from what I gather, this book is written in sections, so like the phases of a star's life, which is very interesting, and I didn't know that until I first started reading this book. I have read one poetry collection from Nikita Gill before, which I didn't mind it, but it wasn't my favourite, and then I read her novel in verse last year and really adored it. One of my favourite books of last year, so I really wanted to give her poetry collections another go, and I did love this book and I really love the message of it, but I don't feel like Nikita's poetry collections are personally for me, even though I feel like that's kind of strange because I really adored her novel in verse, and obviously a novel in verse is still poetry, but I think her writing for me personally transcends a lot better into kind of like a novel form rather than just a poetry collection. There were some poems that I really liked in here and some that I tabbed, and there is one, I think it's at the end, which is one of her most well-known poems, which is called Love in the Time of Coronavirus, which I really adored. I have read this poem before and I really loved it. And I like how it kind of goes through Nikita's journey with lockdown and kind of her experiences with it, and also how it affects other people. And it is a very hard-hitting book to a certain extent, because obviously you're reading about something that's very much ongoing and you don't know when we're going to see the light and stuff, but it's definitely a comfort at the same time, because some of the poems are about hope and about how one day this will be a thing of the past and we will have moved on, and how much we will have learnt from this experience. So I did enjoy this book. I don't know if I'm going to pick up any more of Nikita's collections for just poetry in the future. I definitely will be picking up any more of her novels as she does come out with them. But if you are looking for something to kind of bring you a little bit of comfort during this time, I do recommend this book. It was a really lovely read, and if you love kind of that lovely whimsical writing, I really think you will enjoy this. So those are all the books that I have read recently. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have read any of these books and your thoughts on them, because I would love to know, or let me know a book that you have read recently and your thoughts on them, because I would love to know as always. If you like this video, then please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more bookish videos from me, then make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you'll be noted every time I post a new video. As always, I will leave links to my social media along with the links to my Goodreads in the description down below for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!